Okay, so I'm going to go
And
here.
we are live. Thank you all so much for joining us today. We are super excited to have Ron Lerma with LGE Consulting join us once again. This is part 3 of a 3-part seminar. As a quick overview reminder, if you recall, maybe 5-6 weeks ago when we started this, it was an alignment execution results seminar. So the first seminar, Ron talked about alignment and the importance of knowing your story, your narrative, making sure it's aligning with what you're actually doing, and then transitioning that into the execution. If you're not executing in accordance with that alignment, you won't be able to get to this final part, which is the results part. So, Ron, thank you so much for carving time out of your schedule, for taking time out of your day to share this with us. Please tell us, what do you have for us today?
Well, you're quite welcome and happy to be here again. And again, thank you for having me. Exciting stuff. Super excited to share what we're going to do today. Let me get on our screen here real quick. Okay, John, as you mentioned, as a recap in our last sessions, we spoke about alignment and execution. So this last part is about the results. So today we're talking about how to get the best results. So measuring is a key part of understanding the results. There are problems in measuring those. So firstly, what are you measuring and why? And what tools are you using? So inches versus meters, fractions versus centimeters, and many more. And the more complex the deals, the more complex the measuring tools. So let's talk about why we measure. John, why do we measure?
We have to measure so that you can know what you're accomplishing. That way you can establish benchmarks, know if you're kind of working towards that end vision that you have in mind. If you don't track what you do, there's no way to know if you're doing well.
Perfect. And so in what ways are fundamental tools flawed?
Oh my goodness, be careful. I could talk for hours on this one, but I think I would condense it down to 2 primary ones, at least from my point of view. Number one, the traditional fundamental tools that we've used in the past, they don't account for technological change or improvement. And secondly, they don't account for shifts in consumer behavior. 2020 was obviously a very rough year. We'll be talking about that for many years to come. But with the changes in the way we conduct business and the way we serve and deliver to our customers and clients, that all changed dramatically. I think you shared previously in some of the other seminars how much the digital economy has grown. The traditional fundamental tools that we often use that account for the technological changes and the shift in consumer behavior.
Yeah, and so to your point, there are a lot of it's some shifting sand there. So without the ability to measure, it'd be difficult for a scientist, for example, to conduct experiments and form theories. In sales, without a good way to measure, we run the risk of making financial decisions on big assumptions. So, are we lagging or are we leading? Let's explore this a little further. So anchoring bias, this is when your brain favors the first piece of information. Dr. Carolyn Leaf, who wrote a book called Switch on Your Brain, she writes, our brains are shaped by our reactions. So it's the quality of our thinking and choices that determine our brain's architecture. When we react by thinking negatively and making negative choices, the quality of our thinking suffers. Our negative thinking is not the norm. So our brains want to be positive. So it wants to grab onto the first piece of positive information, whether it's true or not. So the CDC says, Dr. Phil said, my professor said, my mother said, my sales manager said. So we have to be aware that anchoring bias actually exists. Another thing we found is measurement bias, and this refers to as systematic errors that occur in the collection of the data. A good example of this is, because we want to be right, we all run the risk of selecting tools that are either way too complicated or they're not complicated at all, but they are gut felt reactions. And this protects our turf as sales managers, right? I find this common in the trades. I often hear, I have 20 years of experience. This results in this intuitive decision making. And sometimes they get it right, but it's not sustainable for growth because there's no theory to support the decision.
That is so true.
Now, there's also some execution bias. So perhaps you've heard this one before. We've been at this for years. It's always been successful. We've always done it this way. If it's not broken, why fix it? So this kind of thinking is being challenged. Executing a sales process that is sustainable in this fastest moving economy, it does require a different way of thinking. A good example of this right now is telemedicine. To be diagnosed online, it was unheard of 20 years ago. Now it's faster. It's a better pathway to health. So we have to be aware of our execution bias. Here's one that's interesting. So I spent a lot of time in this area. Experience bias, it's a tricky area because new experiences develop each day. And in further examination, on the left is a typical salesperson who operates on intuition, their years of experience, and very focused training. And on the right are sales managers who operate on facts, higher education, and theories. So to have the best results, this gap should be bridged. So today there are plenty of companies who are not recognizing the need to have, or who are actually recognizing the need to have a good mentoring program that they can transfer these experiences, theories, and services. John, have you experienced this with your client base recently?
Oh, we absolutely have. I mean, especially when you're talking about everything that changed in 2020, you have very much of the, I'm going to trust my gut on this. This is what we've always done. I'm going to rely on, what we've done in the past. Yes, that worked, but it was a different time. And then there's also, to your point, the other end of the spectrum where it's very, very forward thinking, very, very theoretical, but then it's not applicable. So bridging that gap, that is absolutely something that we see.
Yeah, and part of the diagnostics that we perform, it's about current state and future state. So where are you now? And that's one of the values of having a good management consulting organizations take a look at your company, because it gives you an unbiased current state. And then you get to figure out, well, where do you want to go? Because doing it internally, it's really hard to get around these biases.
Oh, for sure. And plus you have to worry about the issue of being blindfolded to your own experiences.
Yeah. So let's talk about that. Everybody reports to somebody. So in small businesses, we report to our wives or our spouses, right? That's the way it is.
True.
And as they grow, they report to some kind of accountability group. And to avoid embarrassment, they often pad the results, leading to bad future choices. And on the other hand, when we're making decisions on the numbers only, we run the risk of protecting the systems we develop and not the people who execute the plan. So I've a good example of this. I found when accountants who run companies, they tend to lean more towards the data. And when they acquire good people skills to clearly communicate what their company is doing and wanting to go, they become excellent sales managers.
Because then they've bridged the gap, so to speak.
Yeah, they have. I mean, they're able to, the numbers don't lie. We make them lie, right? Of how they are interpreted. But in the beginning, when we talked about how our brains operate, that first piece of data, if it's positive, we tend to begin to bias that. And we just have to work in reality. Which brings me to this, sales management pushback. So it's a lot of work to develop a winning sales team. And often the sales managers view new measuring methods it's just too much work. And they often go back to what they've always done. But one day, they're going to wake up to a world that has changed so much, it won't be recognizable to them. So the best companies, they adopt a lifelong learning in this area, and it allows them to keep ahead of the curve.
Quick question, Ron, if I can jump in. Do you think we're already at that point?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, that's what I thought. I just wanted to hear it.
Yeah. And it's for sales managers and owners who are trying to grow their organizations. COVID has really it's offered two things. One, a great opportunity to recalibrate, but it also offered an opportunity to go back to what's comfortable. People, when they're saying, I want to go back to the way it was, the reality is it's never going to go back to the way it was. It's not possible. So we're forced to learn something new. And so therefore, I advocate lifelong learning and getting some good coaching to make this happen. So let's consider a different way. Dave Blanchard at Praxis, a New York-based innovation company, has a different business model. He advocates more of a redemptive model. So he says this: if owners really understood what is going on with their salespeople, why would they require one of their salespeople, who may be a single parent with kids, be measured in the same way that a salesperson who is married with no kids? John, your thoughts?
I think to everything you've been talking about, I think it addresses the different economy that we're in today. A lot of the, just as you talked about earlier, a lot of the measuring tools and metrics of management that we've used historically, not to say that they're bad or by any stretch of the imagination, there have been a lot of companies that have leveraged that very well. But as you pointed out a moment ago, we're in a different economy today. We might not be able to use the same sales models, the same management structures that we have historically used because of our different economy, because it has changed.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah. So here's a challenge to your listeners. Why can't several different sales models be executed at the same time in the organization, to accommodate that G6? Measuring a millennial would be different from measuring a senior. So perhaps a model that accommodates rather than discriminates. So the best results are achieved when salespeople are freed up to do what they do best, under any circumstance. So these G6 tools, dynamic measuring, because things are moving so quickly, new tools are needed. And so I would suggest to your listeners to be open, to maybe a different way. Each industry is a little bit different, but each industry is changing also. So for the best results, new tools are needed. We can talk all day about alignment, execution, and results. I purposely wanted to make this short and concise, and I hope I did that. And I'm at my end now, so I'm happy to answer any questions.
No, thank you for condensing it, because I know that we've talked in the past. I mean, this can literally be a multi-day seminar, and we know that right. For the average small business owner, the average independent small business owner, they don't have that amount of time, especially in the early years. So that's part of what we want to do. We want to take that high-level information, condense it down, and say, hey, here's what you need to know. Here's how you apply it. With that being said, I do have a few questions here, if you don't mind elaborating a little bit.
Sure, absolutely.
We've talked a lot about alignment, execution, results, and obviously, the importance of measuring things differently today. As you and I both know, most small business owners tend to ignore this. So how do you go about measuring these results with a corrective solution, specifically in terms of what y'all do?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the first thing we do is we diagnose before we prescribe a solution. At LG Consulting, we spend a lot of time studying your company, taking a look at what is working, what is not, especially within these three areas: alignment, execution, and results. Each one is a study in and of itself. And what we're looking for is, what problem are we solving? Often we go in, a company says, I want to make more money. Great. And so we'll look at that, but often it's a different problem. So the first thing is diagnose before you prescribe the solution. Probably it's in the second thing as to, this doesn't have to be difficult. It can be easy, but you need an external management consulting organization, because some of these biases are so powerful. To do them internally, because causes some problems. So having a third party take a look at your organization through diagnosis. And then the last thing is current state, future state. Get a good, where are you today? And rethink where you want to go. And then we build out that actual plan from a sales and marketing point of view. Then our company offers not only strategy consulting, but also financial modeling consulting. We want small business to grow, but we also realize that there's a lot of moving pieces to make this happen. So we're specialists in this area. Stanford University Lead has been a fantastic segue for us. We have some great partners and consultants, so we are happy to help.
That's hugely helpful. And I think you kind of touched on your three takeaways from, even though we deliberately kept this really concise and to the point, you did have a few takeaways. Make sure you understand the impact of alignment, execution, and results, both positive and negative. I'll come back to that in a minute. Be open to new measuring tools, and then be willing to get help. I mean, because we talked a little bit about this previously, and you even touched on it today. It's very easy to inflate numbers, so to speak, because you don't want to look like you're failing or you're not hitting your metrics or anything like that. It's understandable. It happens all the time. However, when you do that and you get engaged with that, you're getting inaccurate data that you need. You're missing an opportunity to grow and improve. And that's where it kind of like files 1, 2, 3. Got to understand the impact of the execution or the alignment, execution, results. You need to be open to new measuring tools and measuring metrics because things have changed dramatically and will continue to change. And then be willing to get help. I think that's a really good one, especially as small business owners. We all understand the importance of cash flow and really keeping everything within budget. That being said, if you're not willing to get help from a specialist that can really help you on a specific issue, you're missing out on something hugely important that could ultimately save your business. And I think that's a key reason why. One of the key reasons why I think the statistic is 80% of small businesses go under in the first few years. It's, I got this. I'll take care of it. I got it covered. You can, but just remember you have a lot of other issues to, especially just like day-to-day fires that you're having to put out. You got to be willing to get help. And I think that's where someone like you guys, LGE Consulting, can really step in and say, hey, this is what we do every day. We can help in this area if something seems off.
Yeah. And some of the glaring problems are really clear to us, but often it's just you can't be just a little bit pregnant, right? We're the ones to say, hey, you're pregnant, and so here's what we need to do for the plan. And often the customer is like, I think I'm just a little bit pregnant. Well, we have something to tell you.
Yeah, you are or you aren't.
You're having twins. My goodness, what the heck?
Well, I think that's a really good analogy, though. Before we let you guys, I do know you're busy. Can you give maybe just one example of one glaring issue that you saw because of your specialty that your client missed?
That our client missed as it relates to the sales piece here. The first thing that comes to mind is an opportunity in a vertical market and to change the conversation in order to meet a new need. And there was a bit of a fear. I'm thinking of one client right now who, in the healthcare business, we have opportunity to really leverage, part of the organization. But because, the fear of change, they're like, I think we should leave this alone, because we're just not ready. Whole list of reasons why you don't want to do it. So adjusting the alignment, adjusting the execution, adjusting your sales allows you to open up greater and deeper opportunity in perhaps fields or industries that you're not, currently going after.
That's why you bring on people like you who specialize. You know what to look for. You know the weak points when you walk into a room.
Yeah, sometimes running a company is like painting a white room. You're in it for so long, you don't see the mistake, and it's not glaring. It's just the hue's just a little bit off. So when we walk in, we're able to say, not immediately, because it'd be rude. Hey, you missed a part, as opposed to saying, let's really understand, what your company is all about. where you want to go, what the dream and vision is, and then we can help you customize that paint, to really make it go. And sometimes it's really encouraging and thrilling for us to build a new market for a company, to see them get into industries that they had no idea that it actually existed, and they have a new profit stream, and more to the point is actually growing the company that they can actually help other families, other people, to provide a living, and to see that happen is really a thrill for us.
Absolutely. Because again, it's the whole impact, the ripple impact of that is huge.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Ron, I want to be conscientious of your time, but thank you so much for taking the time to do 3 separate seminars with us, to have it all lined up, talking about alignment, talking about execution, and then really elaborating on that results piece. It's all very applicable. It's very beneficial. And it also provides an additional avenue for the small business owner that might not be able to handle it on their own, but then they can outsource. So thank you so much for taking the time to share your wisdom and insights with us.
Happy to do it. Happy to be here.
You stay safe, stay blessed, and we look forward to talking again soon.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.